Welcome back to the Seasons of Life, where we explore how God uses every season, every hard ones, even the hard ones, to shape us, to strengthen us, and to prepare us for what's next. In this episode, we are discussing the summer season and how summer is a season of growth and testing. Summer is the season of intensity. The sun shines brighter, the heat rises, and everything grows. But growth always comes with testing. And, it's the season where God stretches you and your faith is exercised and your roots deepen and you face pressure that produces maturity. Growth doesn't always happen in comfort, or growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in heat. Summer teaches us to withstand the heat while continuing to grow in faith, character, and obedience. Our key scriptures for this teaching, Psalm 1:3, tells us, "He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, whose leaf does not wither." Or James 1:2-4, it says, "The testing of your faith produces perseverance." 1 Peter 1:7, it tells us your faith is tested as by fire, so it may be proved genuine. And John 15:8, it tells us, "By this my Father is glorified, that you may bear much fruit." Heat exposes what is healthy and what is not. That's something to think about. If it can withstand the fire or if it can withstand the heat, it lets us know if it's healthy or not. When pressure rises in life, when what comes out of you reveals what has been planted on the inside of you. I need to say that again. So when pressures of life arise, what comes out of you reveals what's been going on or what's been planted on the inside of you. So strong roots equal stability. Weak roots equals withering. Summer is God's way of showing you. Summer is God's way of showing you, are you rooted in me or your circumstances? I need to say that one again. Summer is God's way of showing you, are you rooted in him or are you rooted in your circumstances? Growth happens underground before it even appears to the surface. Summer requires consistency. Plants grow most in the summer, not because it's easy, but because conditions force them to stretch. That's something to think about. Not because it's easy for them. It's because the conditions are forcing them. It's stretching them. It's pushing them to make a difference, to do something different. It forces them to stretch, to grow. Spiritually, summer teaches you or teaches us to stay consistent in prayer and to stay committed to obedience and to stay disciplined even when you don't feel like it, and for you to stay focused when distractions increase. Growth is not dramatic, it's daily. We go through daily growth each and every day. We want to grow daily. So faithfulness in small things produces big growth. I need to say that again. When we can remain faithful in small big things, and it tells us not to despise the small beginnings. So when we can grow, when we can stay faithful in the small things, it produces something greater. It produces something bigger. That's when it produces a much bigger growth. Something that we didn't imagine, something that we didn't expect, something that, just God did this beyond our expectations, because he's able to do the exceedingly abundantly above all we can even ask or think. Summer includes testing of your faith. The heat in the summer represents trials and pressures and spiritual warfare and demands and responsibilities and decisions. Those are the things that, the heat of the summer. These tests are not being designed to break you. They're designed to build your spiritual stamina. In James 1:3, it says the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So God tests what he intends to, what he trusts. God tests what he intends to trust. I need to say that again. God tests what he intends to trust. So if God is testing you, it's because he plans to use you. I need to say it again. Sometimes we go through those things because, and it's uncomfortable and it's difficult, but God is preparing you for something. He's testing you to see, are you going to withstand? Are you going to withhold? Are you going to hold on to him? Are you anchored in his truth? Are you rooted and grounded in him? So if God is testing you right now, it's because he plans to use you. Summer produces visible fruit. This is the season where growth becomes noticeable. People see your maturity, that old behaviors fall off. They fall away. You're no longer a responder. You're no longer responding the way that you used to, or your walk is different. Your talk is different. There's something different about you in the summertime. So new strength emerges. You have this something different about the strength that you had, or the way that you used to be. Those things that is something new about you, something different about you in the summertime. Again, people see maturity, old behaviors fall off, and new strengths emerge. And you walk with God because your walk with God, not you walk with God. It's that your walk with God, it becomes evident. It's noticeable. God is doing some things in you, and it's very evident in the summertime. So summer produces visible fruit. So fruit is the evidence that the heat didn't destroy you. Fruit is your evidence that the heat did not destroy you. It shaped you. I need to say that one more time. So if you're going through the fire or going through some difficult times, the fruit that you produce in the summertime is that heat. It's the evidence that heat didn't destroy you. It shaped you. It built you. It strengthened you. If you can withstand the heat, you can withstand. You can stand. It says bear much fruit. Fruit is not for decoration. Y'all, it's not something we just put in a basket and just let it sit there. It's for feeding other people. If you are living a fruitful life, it's so that you can be a blessing to others. I say it so often, be blessed as well as a blessing unto others. So God allows fruit in your life so that it's not there for decoration. It's not there to sit on a shelf. It's not there to not be used. It's there for feeding other people, being a blessing to other people. That is very, very important. If God, if you're at that place, again, in John, it tells us to bear much fruit so that we can feed other people, so that we can be a blessing to others. Summer prepares you for harvest. What grows in summer becomes harvest in the fall. I need to say that. Be mindful of that. Whatever you're producing in the summertime, it becomes your harvest in the fall time. So this means that every test is preparation. Everything that you go through is preparation, even the good, the bad, and the not so pretty, right? So every lesson is a seed. I need to say that. Yes, every lesson that you go through, every lesson that God allows, everything that God allows us to go through is a seed. So we've got to be mindful of that. It's not just wasted time. It's not just wasted seeds. It's not wasted. God can use it for his glory. Pay very close attention to that. So every challenge is an investment into your future. Every challenge that you face, every challenge that you endure, everything that you go through, it is an investment. It is preparing you for your future. It is not wasted. You need this to grow. God uses summer to produce strength in you that you will need in the next season. I need to say that. So everything that we're going through in that season, again, it prepares us for the next season. So God uses the summer to produce the strength that you're going to need for the next season. So you cannot skip summer and expect a harvest. I'm going to say that. Yes. Because sometimes in the summertime we get lazy. The weather makes us a little bit different, and we forget and we neglect some of the things that we really need to nurture and pay very close attention to. So you've got to be careful that you can't skip over the summer and expect a harvest in the fall. I need to say that again. So we've got to be careful that you're mindful of the season that you're in. You're mindful at the seeds that you're sowing even in that season. You're mindful at the things that you're doing in that season. So summer is where God intensifies your growth. It's the season of stretching and testing and developing and maturing. And not everything is comfortable in the summertime, but everything is purposeful. I'm going to say that one again. Not everything is comfortable in the summertime, but everything is purposeful. That's something to be mindful of. And if you endure the heat, you will see the fruit. Yes, if you endure the heat, you will see the fruit. So if you stay rooted, you will grow. If you stay grounded, you will grow. If you remain steadfast in him, you will grow. If you remain faithful in him, you will be prepared for your harvest. I need to say that. If you're faithful, you will see and you will be prepared for your harvest. So the summer is the time to where we've got to be very, very careful. We've got to be mindful not to get lazy in the summer times, because it's so easy to get lazy in the summertime. So the seasons of life, the summer seasons of life, right? So we have to learn, to steward and to mature and to stay focused. So in the summer seasons of life, there's stewardship, there's maturity, and there's focus. So we must not mistake summer for spring, and it's easy to do so, right? Because, we're feeling good, especially after coming out of a winter season. We've got to be careful not to mistake the winter for the spring. We must be careful not to mistake the summer for the spring. So spring is about new beginnings. Summer is about sustaining what has already begun. I need to say that one again. So spring is about the new beginnings, the springing forth of the new things that are to come. Summer is about sustaining what has already begun. If spring is when God plants and revives, then summer is when God expects growth, fruit, and responsibility. That's something to think about. So in the springtime, God plants and renews and revives those things in you. And in the summertime, he expects growth and fruit and, the responsibility of us, right? So you did not plant this vineyard just to admire the leaves. I need to say that again. God didn't just plant the vineyard just to admire the beauty of it, right? So you've got to be mindful that you did not plant this vineyard just to admire the leaves. So there's a key difference between the springtime and the summertime. So spring, we have that excitement. We have the beginnings. We have new vision. We have that emotional energy. We have preparation. But in the summertime, we have endurance. We have continuation. We have, sustained obedience, and we have disciplined focus, and we have production. So we've got to be careful of not mistaking the spring and the summer. So spring asks, what are you starting? And the summer asks, what am I doing with what he has started? That's something to think about. I'm going to say that again. So your spring asks, what is God starting? What is God starting? And in the summertime, it asks, what am I doing with what God has started? That's something to think about. So what are ways that we can mistake our summer for our spring? Chasing new beginnings instead of finishing assignments. I'm going to say that, right? So we've got to be careful that in the summertime, the temptation is to start something new, shift focus too quickly, or to abandon what requires endurance. But summer says, stay planted. If you're in the summertime, it's saying to stay planted. In Galatians 6:9, it tells us, let us not grow weary in doing good. So we got to be careful in that summertime, not to mistake it for springtime. So, chasing those new beginnings, we have to be careful, because temptation, I'm going to say it again, in the summer, the temptation is to start something new, shift your focus too quickly, or to abandon what requires endurance. But summer says to stay planted. Summer says to stay planted. Expecting consistent excitement. So ways that we mistake summer for the spring is, ways that we mistake the summer for the spring is by expecting consistent excitement. Spring feels fresh. That's just like a freshness or a refreshing in the springtime, but summer can feel routine and demanding. So if you're waiting for feelings to carry you, you may abandon your assignment too soon. I need to say that one again. If you're waiting on your feelings to carry you, you may abandon your assignment too soon. Summer requires faithfulness and not just not feelings. I'm going to say that. So your summer requires faithfulness and not feelings. Be mindful of that. So ways that we mistake the summer for the spring is by confusing visibility and maturity. So things look grown in the summertime, but fruit isn't always ready. So even because it looks that way does not mean it's mature enough or it's ready, or, visibly it may look this way, but it very well may not be ready. So things look grown in the summer, but fruit isn't always ready. So green does not mean ripe. Yeah, I need to say that one again. So green does not always mean ripe. I need to make sure you get that right. So green does not always mean ripe. You shall know them by their fruit. We see that in Matthew 7:16. So be careful that you're not confusing visibility with maturity. There's something in that, right? So green does not always mean ripe. Neglecting maintenance. In the summertime, ways that we mistake summer, we mistake the summer for the spring is by neglecting maintenance. Summer exposes what was tended properly in the spring. I'm going to say that one again. Summer exposes what wasn't tended properly in the spring, because then that's when we see that weak roots or poor habits or lack of discipline, and what you don't maintain in the summer will wither. I need to say that again. What you don't maintain in the summertime will wither and die if you're not careful, if you're not focused, if you're not paying close attention to that. So what must we do to stay focused in the summer? What must we do to stay focused in the summer? It's to guard against distraction. We've got to be careful that we're not distracted. We have to stay focused, and summer brings increased activity. Stay focused even though, there's increased activity. There's a lot more going on in the summertime, but we've got to be careful. Be careful in the summertime, and we've got to be careful at those opportunities in the summertime. So summer brings opportunities, but we've got to be careful. Be careful at those opportunities. And let me tell you something. Sometimes you have to say no. Yes is not always the answer to everything. Let me say it again. You don't always have to say yes. Sometimes there's a no. So be careful at those opportunities. Seek the Lord and make sure you get your instructions before you say your yes, right? Make sure it's God's yes before it's your yes. I need to say that one. Make sure that it's God's yes before it's your yes. In the summer brings open doors. Summer brings open doors, and not every door is yours to walk through. I need to say that one again. Just because the door opens does not mean that it's the door for you to walk through. That's why it is so important that you seek the Lord. It's very important that you spend time in the presence of the Lord and making sure that this is where God wants you to be. This is what God wants you to do. So open doors. So in the summertime, summer brings open doors, but we have to know that not every door is yours to walk through. That's something to be mindful of. So in Revelation 3:8, it tells us, I have set before you an open door. Make sure that it's the open door that God has set before you. So God sets the door. You don't just chase them all. I need to say that again. When God sets the door before you, but you don't chase them all. Make sure you seek the Lord and get your instructions. Not every door is yours to walk through. In the summertime, it brings increased activity, opportunities, open doors. But again, not every open door is yours to walk through. That's something to be mindful of. Things we must do to stay focused in the summertime. We must be consistent even when it's not new anymore, right? So, we get so excited when things are new, when there's a newfound excitement when something new happens, right? So we've got to learn to stay consistent when it's not new anymore. Consistency is the language of the summer, right? So we've got to keep praying. We've got to keep showing up. We've got to keep working with vision. We've got to keep obeying God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. And we find that in 1 Corinthians 4:2. Again, it says, moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. So staying consistent when it's not new anymore. Consistency. And it's the language for the summer. Summer's language is consistency. Keep praying, keep standing up, keep showing up, keep working the vision, keep obeying God. Consistency in the summertime. Another example of, what must we do to stay focused in the summertime is water what God has given you. That's something to think about. Water what God has given you. Growth still requires care. I need to say that one again. Just because you see growth does not mean it still it needs to be nurtured. It needs to be maintained. It needs to be loved on just a little bit. So growth requires, care. And that's something to be mindful of. So we've got to learn to water our growth with prayer, water our growth with the word of God, water our growth with accountability, water our growth with rest. We've got to be careful with that. So in 1 Corinthians 3:6, it says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So we've got to know that water what God has given you, and be careful that, you're paying very close attention to those things, because you don't want those things to die. You don't want those things to fade out. You've worked too hard for that. You planted, you worked too hard for that. So be careful. Be very careful with that. Another thing that we must do to stay focused in the summertime is we have to recognize heat as part of growth. In the summer, we need the heat for growth. So heat isn't punishment, it's development. That's something to think about. Because y'all know when it gets hot outside, there's a different kind of hot in the summertime. Let me say, depending on what part of the world you're living in, that sometimes those temperatures can rise, but that heat isn't punishment, it's development. So pressure strengthens your character. So that when you're that pressure that you're maybe experiencing or you may be enduring or going through at this time, it is producing something with your character. And another thing is, pressure tests commitment. Pressure really tests if you're committed. Let me say it that way, right? So pressure also deepens your roots. That's something to think about. So in 1 Peter 5:10, it says, after you have suffered a little while, you will restore. After you have suffered a little while, will restore you and make you strong. After you have suffered a little while, will restore you and make you strong. So we've got to be careful that, sometimes that it deepens our roots. So heat, sometimes it helps. It's for the growth. Heat is there for a reason. It's not just by chance. It's there for a reason. So we've got to be careful with the pressure and the things that we do, when we are experiencing that pressure. It's summertime, right? But we've got to stay focused, right? And so another thing that we must stay focused with is resist comparison. I'm going to say that one again. It's so easy to compare yourself or your season with somebody else's. So in the summertime, you've got to learn to resist that comparison. Summer makes it easy to compare growth. It does, because you want to look at what your sister or your brother may be going through and the things that they're producing and the things that they're going through. But keep in mind, your story is your story. Your journey is your journey. The things that God created you for, He created for you. So you've got to be careful not to compare and to resist comparison, because each field matures differently. I'm going to say that one again. So each field matures differently. So in Galatians 6:4, it says, each one should test their own actions. So we've got to be careful not to compare our summer or our situation or our fields or our growth with other people, because what, again, God has for you is for you. So these are some of the things that we have to look at and pay very, very close attention to in the summertime, because it's so easy for us to mistake the summer months with the spring. And it's not the same. So signs that you are properly walking through summer. Let's look at that, right? Signs that you're properly walking through the summer. You're more disciplined than emotional. You're more structured than emotional. Let's say it that way, right? So, and then you're producing fruit, not just ideas. You're producing fruit. Those ideas that you had in the springtime, those new things that you had in the springtime, you're beginning to see them produce. You're doing some work. You're working in the summertime, and don't get lazy in the summertime, right? You got to still do some work in the summertime. And then you're focused. You're staying focused, and despite your distractions, you're focused even when things around you may be causing chaos or confusion, but you're focused through the distractions. That's something to be mindful of. And in the summertime, you're properly walking through the summer. If you're growing in endurance, you're able to endure. You're not impatient. You're waiting on the Lord. You're focused and walking with the Lord, and not just before Him or after Him. You're walking with the Lord each and every day. You're spending time with Him so that you can seek Him and get your instructions, and you're able to endure. So you're growing in endurance. Another way that that you're walking through the summer. Let's say that we're walking through the summer. You're learning to manage responsibility. You're able to manage your responsibilities. God has given it to you because He trusts you. That's something to be mindful of in the summertime. Don't get distracted. Don't lose focus. That, you're learning to manage your responsibilities. That's a sign that you're properly walking through the summertime, right? Because guess what? Fall is coming, and there's still work to do in every season, and not just, get lazy and lax because we're in a comfortable place. No, you got to always stay ready, stay prepared, right? So the purpose of the summer, right? So spring awakens you, summer sustains you. So spring spring initiates you, but summer develops you. So spring excites you and summer matures you. Those are some of the things that we have to think about in this summer season. So y'all, I'm super, super excited as always, as to what God is doing in the seasons of life, and not making sure that we are not mistaking the springtime for the summer, or the summertime for the springtime, because it is so easy to do so. And we know we have to stay focused and know that everything that we're going through is preparation. Even the heat, God allows the heat for something greater. It's going to let us know, the heat is going to really reveal who you are. The heat is going to reveal where you are, who you are. That's something to be mindful of. So y'all, I am super excited as to what God is doing. And I want to thank you again for joining me for today's Seasons of Life, where we've been talking about the summer and some of the things that we have to be careful of and not mistaking them for the spring, because it is easy to do so. But before we go, I want to always leave you with this reminder: you cannot control your season, but you can control your response. Every season has a purpose. Winter refines you, spring renews you, summer grows you, and fall rewards you. And through them all, God never changes. No matter what season you're in, you are held, you are guided, and you are growing. Until next time, keep walking with God through every season of your life. I am Dr. Deidre M. Cooley here at the Filling Station. I hope that everyone have an amazing day today, as always, on purpose.